Hello, my name is Kenny Pendergast, and we're going to be looking at polybrominated biphenyls, or PBBs. The most notorious case where a majority of the research stems from is from an accidental mass poisoning that occurred in Michigan in the 1970s. In 1973, a chemical plant accidentally shipped PBBs to a livestock feed plant, which resulted in the accidental poisoning of millions of people within the state of Michigan, who consumed contaminated beef, chicken, pork, milk, and eggs from the farm. It took about a year to figure out that this accidental poisoning occurred. Eventually, a cohort of approximately 5,000 exposed individuals was created so that studies could be done on the long-term effects of PBB exposure. Because PBBs are biologically stable and eliminated slowly, significant body burdens could persist throughout the lifetimes of exposed individuals. One study in particular found that PBB had a median half-life of 13.5 years. PBBs are chemicals that were added to plastics and used in a variety of consumer products, usually computer monitors or television sets, and it was to make it so that the plastic was difficult to burn. They're a class of brominated hydrocarbons, and they contain a central biphenyl structure surrounded by up to 10 bromine atoms. Because PBBs were mixed into plastic rather than bound, they were able to leave the plastic and find their way into the environment. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services states that PBBs are reasonably anticipated to be human carcinogens. Researchers believe that there could be more health effects lingering decades after the toxic contamination of Michigan's food supply. Just like anything else that we're exposed to, PBBs have a variety of factors to determine whether or not you'll be harmed by PBB exposure. Obviously, they include dose. As we've learned in class, the dose can make the poison, the duration, and the method of exposure. What made the Michigan incident so interesting was the fact that there was a mass ingestion of these chemicals. As I've shown in previous slides, PBBs were mixed into plastics to use as something to make sure that they wouldn't catch on fire or burn. So you can make the case that consumers necessarily weren't ingesting PBBs until the Michigan incident. Much of the research following the Michigan incident has specifically looked at what ingestion of PBBs will do in the long term. They've found that PBBs are stored mainly in body fat and tend to concentrate in breast milk fat, and that they can also enter the bodies of children through breastfeeding, hence why long-term exposure is thought to pose a greater risk versus short-term exposure. Despite all the research that has ensued since the Michigan incident, little is known about the health of people who are exposed to low levels of PBBs for long periods of time via ingestion, inhalation, or skin contact. Lab animals that have been fed PBBs have had numerous side effects such as body weight loss, skin disorder, nervous system effects, having damage to the liver, kidneys, and thyroid glands, as well as their immune systems. Because animals that fed PBBs did develop cancer, the National Toxicology Program and the Department of Health and Human Services has determined that PBBs may reasonably be anticipated to be carcinogens. Between the years 2004 and 2006, reproductive age women in the Michigan PBB registry who are not pregnant, lactating, or taking hormonal medications were recruited for a study. They kept daily diaries and provided daily urine samples for up to 6 months. The study found that those exposed to high and medium levels of PBBs were associated with lower E13G levels across the menstrual cycle and lower FSH levels during the follicular phase compared to those who were exposed to low levels of PBBs. Despite intriguing results from the study, the modest sample size requires some caution. There's an abundance of research on the effects of PBB exposure on women. Studies that assess PBB levels in breast milk and their link to fetal mortality are suggestive but inconclusive. Furthermore, those who live in the lower peninsula of Michigan, where meat and dairy was most contaminated, are put at a higher risk versus those who live in the upper peninsula, where there was less quarantine farms. One animal study in particular that was intriguing involved feeding PBBs to rhesus monkeys and monitoring levels in their blood. The survey revealed less in weight and length of menstrual cycles in the monkeys, as well as a lowered cholesterol. Given the research on the effects of PBB exposure on women, it was natural for researchers to inquire about the effects of PBB exposure on developing fetuses and children. Children are exposed to PBBs typically in the same way adults are, mainly by eating contaminated food. But because PBBs dissolve readily in fat, they can accumulate in breast milk fat and be transferred to babies and young children. Infants that were breastfed by exposed mothers for 6 months were 6 times more likely to have detectable levels of PBBs in their bloodstreams than babies who were born to exposed mothers but not breastfed. Because the nervous system and thyroid are still developing in the fetus and child, the effects of PBBs on these target systems might be more profound from exposure before and soon after birth. PBBs was an interesting contaminant to examine, given the nature of the research that's available, all stemming from this one mass poisoning. The thing that I struggle with throughout the should we ban PBBs, should we keep PBBs argument is that the result of their banning was because of their misuse, which led to humans being exposed to them via ingestion. Their intended use, humans likely would have only been exposed via contact, possibly inhalation, given the nature of how they were able to still get out into the environment since they weren't bonded to the plastic. However, inhalation in that amount, as well as contact in that amount, likely wouldn't have shown the results that we've seen from the studies in both humans and animals via ingestion. For the record, officially, my stance on PBBs is that they should remain as they have been for about the past 50 years, which is banned. This reasoning solely based on the fact that they have been banned for decades, and it doesn't seem like anybody is really calling for them to come back, or that they're needed for anything in particular. Environmentally, they have been found on sites designated for cleanup. So they're damaging to the environment as well, regardless of if humans are eating them or not. When we dispose of these products that we no longer need, they are damaging to the environment. I wasn't able to fit everything into this presentation as far as the studies I was looking at, but there were other negative effects outside of the hormonal effects on women. There was one study in particular that looked at thyroid issues stemming from PBB exposure in Michigan on men in particular. They were finding this issue to be very prevalent. There's a lot of research out there that says the ingestion of PBBs is likely bad for humans. However, to me it was really interesting to see how the accidental misuse led to this chemical being completely banned. So I'm interested to see what the class thinks on this particular subject, because it is this interesting scenario where you have something being used as it's not intended. Just like how if we were to use anything around us currently as it was not intended, there likely could be harm. So I'm interested to see what everyone thinks. Thank you, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.